Let's talk about the movie project and how did you become involved with it?
Chris, I kept going to films, and I love Christian films, and I know we need them as an alternative, and I know they're uplifting, but I kept looking for a film that, and I kept asking God, when is there going to be a film that I can hand out, that like attract my friends that won't necessarily go to a Christian quote film, or I could take some friends, people at the gym with me, because they're just they don't get it if they don't know God.
Right.
And so I kept asking God and praying about that, and it just started burning in me. And I don't know about you, Chris, but usually things of my flesh, they kind of pass. But things that dwell on me and just stay with me, I've learned to really trust God on that. And so I sat down and I wrote a story. And so then I tried to find someone to write the script. And I couldn't find anybody who really saw the vision for it and would take me serious. So, I prayed about it, and I felt like God said, "You write the script." Yeah. So I bought software, and I taught myself to write a script. And so I sent it out to Hollywood to analyze and ask advice, and a couple of professionals. And one of them called me back, and he said, I'm not a believer. He said, but I think this would be a good film with a couple of changes, and I'd go see it. And so I really took that as a confirmation.
Yes.
And if you believe in this project, if you believe that it can be used for a ministry of God, we have to have unity in it, because we took assets from our family, from my kids' inheritance. And I said, but this will be something that can be used from here on out. And but I wanted them to feel good about it. And we all came together, in a unified group, and we hired a team out of Atlanta and Birmingham, and we filmed for 28 days. Yeah. But previous to that, the two actors trained for 6 months with 4 different professional fighters, and really, it's a miracle to the situation to where it's come, Chris.
Yeah. Well, generally when God is involved, that's the way it is. Particularly when He asks us to step out on faith, and the way that you did it. And we had a small interruption there, I guess, due to our internet connection. But I wanted to sum up, I believe what you said there was your family pulled your resources together, and made an investment in this project, and thus we have this project today.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
Man.
And we approached it like, I told them, don't expect a return. I said, we're independent film. The situation is, if we were to write a check to a ministry, that funds, we're providing those funds to God to be used. And I said, that's the way I see this project. And that's the way we looked at it, and that's the way we invested in it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the project itself. I mean, first of all, I will say, when looking at the trailer, it certainly appealed to me. And I will say this in the most sincere and nice way that I could possibly say it, but I will say that most faith-based films generally appeal to women. This is a man's film. I can appreciate that. That's the first thing I noticed. First of all, it's about a fighter. It's about him falling in love. So you took us through all of the emotions, even from a male standpoint, that we can appreciate. So why was that important for you to impact? I guess have all of those elements in there.
I wanted it to be real life. Real life. We have romance, and we have relationships, and we have growth, and we have struggle, and we have problems, and we have to overcome, and I've lived those things. And so I wanted people to share in that identity, and being able to confirm who they are, through a knowledge of God, and how people can be an asset, and help you grow in your faith and be there, and God can provide, interaction. Our people can be a detriment. They can pull you back into the world and make you seem less. So I really, elements of bullying, elements of what we face, I tried to bring those into the script, and let the young man walk his life and have to make a choice.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we all face.
Yeah, and like you talked about earlier, while it has the elements of fighting in there, it is still a film that every one in the family can go and see. It's a family film that everyone can go and see it together. So I really like that as well, how you were able to have that balance with it. We've talked around the film. If you had to describe the film in 3 words or less, how would you describe it?
God-based, a faith film, identity, and knowledge. And the reason I say that is because we so often won't look at our own lives, our path, and our identity as we walk through. And I really think it's important that that people come away asking themselves, who are they? You know, we have a scene in the movie to where a pastor says, "Who are you?"
And by that I mean, what defines you? I didn't ask you what you do for a living. I didn't ask you what your name is. But who are you? That's an important question because psychology tells us today that we are the sum total of all of our decisions.
But God gave us an identity that's just special and unique to Him. And so identity, God-based identity is the emphasis of the film.
Yeah, yeah. And you talk about that identity piece. You know, when we talk about the fight within, you know, many times in life, we are pulled into fights that we don't intend to be a part of. What does the fight within teach us as viewers about that particular struggle?
Well, we all have an internal struggle. And really, until you acknowledge that and come to terms with it, you can't really handle your external struggles. You know, there's a line where there's an elderly man who represents the Holy Spirit in the film, and he says, you know, the fight within is that fight that men have with God, whether He's real, whether He cares about them, you know, whether He loves them, and we're drawn into things because we all have that void that God has built within us to seek Him out. He says, "Seek me and you shall find me." And the problem is we try to fill it with all these other things. We fill it with our job, our occupation, our titles, our money. And even when we reach those accomplishments, we're left empty so often.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Jim, you've given us some glimpse into your personal life and how it relates to this particular project, but there is one that we have not touched on. You know, that relationship between a father and a son. Being a father myself, I certainly understand that's an invaluable relationship. You had the great privilege of working with your son on this project. First of all, was that an easy decision to involve him in the project? And then secondly, what was it like working with him?
It was totally a God thing. My son, he's a very gifted athlete. He had D1 scholarship offers in football, and he actually wanted to be an actor. He had done small parts out of Atlanta. He gave up his scholarship, moved to California, and this film wasn't written for him. And actually, we had a casting company, and I really didn't feel comfortable in him being a lead actor. And I thought that perhaps a smaller role being, you know, at this early stage in his career, but they liked him and they cast him, and he had to undergo the casting directors, and then he had to go through the choreography. The gentleman who did the choreography, you know, he had to pass whether or not he really thought he could turn him into a fighter. Yeah. So, you know, God just blessed, I think, our obedience and allowed us to work together. He was totally dedicated to the project. You know, he actually trained, it was more like 7 months for him. You know, he 4 different professional fighters. He trained twice a day, 6 hours total. And for me, it was just a blessing to watch him with what he's been gifted at to try to attain that level and be so dedicated to it. And I think, again, because I tried to be obedient to God, that God blessed us through that obedience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, man, the opportunity to be able to do that. And like you said, he went through all of the tests, passed the test, and obtained the role and did a great job with it.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I guess what is the message? You know, in this particular film, there is a message to father and sons. And what would you say that message is?
Well, and that was a piece that I wrote in. You know, I was the kind of father, especially when my kids were young, that I didn't care what they tried. You know, I would let them, if they really wanted to do the martial arts, if they really wanted to do, you know, like my son wanted to do piano, and, you know, then he wanted to play sports and baseball, and that was okay. But I was a little bit overbearing from the point I said, you're going to be the best you can be if you go after something. And there's a part in the film where I show, I think as fathers, we all want, especially our sons, to be something, to accomplish something. A lot of times we want to push our skill sets or the things that we've learned onto them, or even live through them.
In your past glory.
I know a lot of fathers I watch who they live through their sons, and if I had a message from fathers to son, you know, fathers, you know, love your sons and help them grow in the gifts that God has provided for them versus trying to shape them into something you want them to be.
You've got some reaction from audience, saying it's amazing. The film is amazing. It's uplifting, encouraging. So as you think about what it took for you to put this project together, the investment that your family made, and then to see this finished product and to hear that type of reaction from it, what does that do for you personally?
Well, it's a confirmation. In other words, we 100%. This film, we've been called the little picture that could, kind of compared to the little train that could, because even the people with our home distribution through Sony, a lot of them just go, there's no way you could really be where you're at, as an independent and where you came from. And so we know God's hands on it. And we hear those type things. And what's so funny is, you'll hear things from the guys that they pick up. You hear things from the girls that they pick up, the different ages. And so there's a lot of little, what I would call nuggets that God is using to touch people in different ways. We had one gentleman, he really, it brought him to tears when we talked about when he saw the bullying part, because he had been bullied all through high school. And so, it amazes me, Chris, because I'm not a unique guy. There's nothing special about me. I mean, other than God just used me to put something on paper and then a film so that he could touch lives. And that's all it's about.
Yeah. So what's the one thing you would hope audiences will take away from this? Because like you've talked about before, there are a number of messages in this project. What is the one thing you hope they walk away with?
That they are a created entity by the creator of heaven and earth, who loves them more than anything else in the universe, the very thing that he died for, to represent that love, to explain that love to us. And that once they come to terms with that identity, everything else falls in place. There's a line where our we call him the old man in the film. That's he makes reference and says, once your heart is right with God, everything else falls in place. Yeah. And you see life different. So the one thing I'd like is that they would question who they are, and then make reference to who they could be with a relationship with Christ, with God. And that would be the main thing.
Well, Jim, I want to tell you thank you. Thank you for your obedience. Thank you for the investment from your family to bring to us something that is uplifting, encouraging, refreshing, and even evangelical, and helping those who may not know Christ to come to know Christ through this project. So with that, brother, hats off to you, and thank you so much for what you guys have done.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the interview, and thank you for just the friendship. I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. And we're going to encourage folks to get out there and purchase their DVD and really help this project to go even further.
Fantastic. Tell them to watch it. Tell them to pass it on.
Absolutely. A great stocking stuffer as we go through the holidays here, Christmas quickly approaching. Place it in a stocking of someone who you may not be able to share the message of Christ with. This is a way to do it. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, all right. Well, Jim, thanks so much.
I want to ask you a question this morning. Who are you? And by that I mean, what defines you? I didn't ask you what you do for a living. I didn't ask you what your name is. But who are you?
You're a fighter? That's what you do? I don't get it.
My dad was a fighter. I guess I was just born into it.
I said, is this really about me? Or is it about you and your past glory?
It's where I remind myself about God's plan for my life.
God's plan.
God has a plan for everyone.
You ready to take on that fight?
I'm not about this anymore.
I don't care about you, your girlfriend, or your dead dad. I don't even care if God Almighty himself told you not to fight.
I told you I'd kill you if you ever touched her.
Young man, God has always had fighters. Warriors, men like Joshua and David. Men who fought for God, for his people. Men who God fought through.